Back on Newsmaker Saturday, the implosion of the Pac-12 conference in college athletics has sent shockwaves through the world of sports. ASU and University of Arizona, as you know, joining Utah and Colorado, defecting to the Big 12. And beginning next year, they will compete against schools like TCU, Texas Tech, Baylor, University of Cincinnati, University of Central Florida. It's weird, it's kind of exciting, and make no mistake, it is all about TV money. Ed Desser knows a lot about this. He's negotiated 70 sports rights deals and advised over 30 professional sports teams. Ed, thanks for being with us on Newsmaker Saturday.
Sure, happy to do it.
Is this good or bad in the end for college football and college sports?
You know, that really depends on your perspective. Is it good for the tradition? Certainly not. Is it good for certain schools that will benefit financially? Yes. Is it good for travel by student athletes? No. Is it good for creating more revenue for the haves? Certainly.
Yeah, I mean, when you go back, you look back historically, and this is really interesting, that it may have been the Supreme Court that kind of set the dominoes in motion on this thing in the 7-2 decision way back, where Justice John Paul Stevens basically said the NCAA can't reign supreme over every TV deal, and that the conferences, because of antitrust reasons, can make their own deal. And then it became the Wild West.
You know, you can indeed trace it back that far, but I would submit that, you know, the NCAA of its day was out of step even then, because in 1994, you know, we were already seeing the advent of 24/7 cable networks, cable sports networks, to be sure. And once that happened, there was the beginning of an insatiable appetite that gave rise to conference networks, that gave rise to split packages, that led us to, you know, Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2. There's any number of things that have transpired as a result that at some level you can trace back to that decision, though that decision was a fairly narrow one, but it did certainly unleash the true power of college sports on the telecast viewing public.
As far as the Pac-12's demise, and you and I go back to when we were following it as a Pac-8. I grew up with the Pac-8. And then, you know, it was really exciting when Arizona and Arizona State joined in 1978. That was my first year of college, so I was at ASU, and that was an exciting time to be part of that conference.
The Pac-10.
Yes, the Pac-10, then the Pac-12 with Utah and Colorado joining, and that was a nice addition. It seemed to be manageable, but now this is just, I mean, playing Central Florida, Cincinnati, it's wild. Some of it is intriguing though.
Well, Central Florida's been a pretty good team recently.
Yes.
As Cincinnati, so, you know, it could actually be good in terms of bringing unusual matchups to the fore. But I do think that what is lost in the process, and maybe this is, you know, us being sentimental, but the regional rivalries that were the hallmark of college sports are one of its attractions, and it is being dissipated move by move. You know, as soon as Texas and Oklahoma went to the SEC, you know, you lost a hunk. As soon as UCLA and USC went to the Big Ten, you know, no longer really regional. You know, query what becomes of the Rose Bowl game.
Exactly. I mean, it'll be part of the national playoff picture, but the you know, the Ohio State USC on New Year's Day that's gone probably.
Yeah, and it's sad. I mean, unless perhaps, and I've mused about this with some of my colleagues, maybe the Rose Bowl becomes the Big Ten championship, and there are, you know, East and Western divisions of the Big Ten, and maybe then we can still get, SC and Michigan.
I'm curious, since you're a UCLA guy, I've looked at this and I'm thinking, do USC and UCLA really want to travel from really nice weather? I'm thinking football now. And going into Ohio State, Michigan in November, snow, cold. I mean, could this potentially hurt those programs to be competing in that kind of stuff?
I don't think it's really going to matter that much. You're already dealing with the football teams chartering their flights, and so, you're going to spend 2 hours flying to Colorado, so maybe you spend a third hour to get to one of the Big Ten schools. It's not that harmful, at least for football. I think the bigger issue is going to come with some of the so-called Olympic sports. They're going to have tough travel and they're going to be doing a lot more of it. And it's not like the old days where you could take a bus from UCLA to Stanford, for example.
Yes. I've got to ask you about Dr. Crow, who has been something of a visionary, seen across the country as a guy creating the new American university with Arizona State. He's been seen as kind of an oracle. But in this case, was he perilously close to being caught flat-footed on this whole thing? Was he being sentimental, as you talk about the Pac-12 and trying to hold it together? What was his role in all this?
I don't really know, to tell you the truth. I was not in the room when these things were happening. I've been reading a lot of the coverage from knowledgeable sources. In the old days, conferences were rather like clubs, and they were collegial, they were tight-knit, and the participants had long-term relationships. And little by little, as this has become more and more commercial, that has become, something of the exception as opposed to the rule. I think that, what's happening is college sports is just becoming more and more like pro sports every day. Though, it tends to pretend as though that's not really happening. And I think this kind of proves the point.
Money is the driver here, right? TV money. That and for Arizona State and Arizona, which we're going to focus on because that's where we are, this is going to mean big money for them, right? Going to the Big 12?
Well, it's going to be some additional money. The Big 12 was never one of the money leaders. The money leaders are clearly the SEC and the Big 10. The ACC is sort of in the middle, and the Pac-12 and the Big 12 really kind of were the laggards, and that was part of the problem. There's a lot of envy in college sports. And, it's understandable if you're running a first-class program and you've got, great coaches and a terrific athletic director and a big, long tail of success over decades, you aspire to get paid at the top of the scale. And that's understandable. That's sort of one of the fundamental concepts in America today. And the problem is that you didn't have the combination of schools and audience that was necessary to drive that. So yes, it's about money, but it's always been about money and exposure.
Yeah.
Perhaps it was about exposure first and money second up until the last decade or so. But those things have obviously flip-flopped, but not enough so that the Pac-12 wanted to take the deal from Apple.
Sad to see the Pac-12 because it kind of had its own unique brand. Sling it around, good weather generally, until you get into the Northwest. And just a fun product. I mean, Pac-12 After Dark was kind of a guilty pleasure for people around the country to watch that high-flying offense and a lot of really skilled athletes. It's sad to see it go.
What the Pac-12 had, its foremost attribute, and we'll put aside the after dark part, but related to the after dark, it was able to program the late time slot for the networks. No other conference had, first-rate Division One games that were able to be scheduled at 10:30 Eastern time. And while the coaches tended to complain, it was not necessarily a bad thing for Arizona, where certainly earlier in the season it was nice to play later. But that was always one of the advantages that the conference offered, and it just wasn't enough. And it would have been enough in prior years, but what we're now seeing in the entertainment industry and the cable industry is a shrinkage that hasn't really been a factor before. So I think that was the thing, really timing, that most impacted the Pac-12's ultimate demise.
Yep, I think people will still watch. Ed Desser, thank you so much for joining us on Newsmaker Saturday. Great to see you, and we really appreciate your insight.
Sure thing.
Thank you, Ed. We're back in a moment on Newsmaker Saturday.